there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Sometimes when I think about taking on a project, I think about kind of the simplest way that I can go about things. And often that means simplifying things like using less products, using less colors, but I still want to make it interesting and I still want to make it kind of catchy to the eye. So today I'm going to be doing exactly that with this project. Now I need some masking paper, so today I'm going to be using the Gina Masking Magic. This stuff is worth every penny. It is definitely worth investing in. It kind of is an investment because I guess it's not cheap. I don't think it's super expensive, but it's definitely not cheap. But there are some products, in my opinion, that are worth purchasing, and this is one of them. So I want to be able to add a whole lot of water and a whole lot of liquid and a whole lot of color, and I do not want it to bleed because that is going to ruin my little project. It's not what I'm after today. So I want a product that I know is going to work and it's reliable, and for me that is the Masking Magic. I have tried lots of other brands and had varied success, but this one I just know I'm always going to have good luck. So this is a sheet of the Masking Magic and I'm cutting up some little lines here. It doesn't really matter how thick these little lines are as long as you make them all the same. I have got a couple of 1/2 inch ones as well, and they are going to just pretty much be my guide. I have a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock here, and this is the only watercolor cardstock that I use. It's my favorite. It's all I have. It works perfect for me every single time. I have 2 of these really thin little strips, and I'm going to be creating like a little grid here, I guess. I want to make sure that I have room down the bottom that I'm going to stamp my sentiment, but I want to make sure that I have around 3 across and 4 down. So there's going to be 12 little squares all up. It really doesn't matter what you create. You can create smaller ones, you can create bigger ones, and as always, I'm looking for alternatives to be able to do these things. If you don't want to do it this way, then you could just cut out little squares or rectangles of colored cardstock or cardstock that you create yourself and color yourself and do a really similar kind of pattern or technique. I mean, there's always another way to do something. So this is just one way today, and I did have fun creating this. So you saw there, I just put a larger piece of masking paper down the bottom. That way I know that that space is going to stay completely clear. I start off with my middle strip so that I can get everything centered. You will also know, if you have watched my channel for a little bit, that I am not a big one on measuring. You definitely could measure these and make sure that they are far more straight and far more centered, but eyeballing it is where it's at for me, and that's okay. I have my little watercolor confetti set here. This is from Prima. This is the only kind of watercolor set that I own, and this one is plenty for me. I really like these colors. I'm squirting a little bit of water there up on the top of the lid because all I want to do today is use one single color, and it's going to be this kind of red cherry color up here, and over in this little spot over here I'm having a really deep pigmented part of it, so it's pretty much full strength cherry color down the bottom. This is going to be the entire row down the bottom that is going to be full strength. I want it to be deep, I want it to be dark. You can go over this a couple of times as well. Then the next easiest one for me, because I'm going to create a kind of ombre look, so I want to go from dark to light and I want it to be pretty obvious. So this one is the most watered down one that I want to have. However, this is still too dark. So all I do is go over with a little damp cloth and I just mop it up, and then that is going to create a really nice light color for me. The in-between ones are really just a matter of playing, adding a little bit more water. Of course, you could do this with normal distress inks. You can use them as watercolors. You can use distress oxide inks. They make perfect watercolors. You can do this with, I mean, anything that you can add water to. I guess the more water that you add, you are able to tone down the color. If you are using something like acrylic paints, then that's really easy too, because you can just add white to your colored paint, and that way you will get all the tones that you need right down to the very lightest one. So there is always a different way to do it depending on what you have in your stash and what you feel comfortable using. Now I just wanted to show you a quick little thing here, because I use the Couture Creations stamping platform, which for a whole lot of reasons I find to be the absolute best, and inside this I have a sticky grid mat. Now I have linked below where I purchased these from, but you can get them in a whole lot of different places. But an alternative that works just as well is the Sizzix sticky grid sheets. Now these are the larger ones, these are 6 by 8 inches, and they work perfectly in these stamping platforms as well. So they come in a 5-pack. These are basically just grid sheets which have adhesive on both sides of them. It's kind of a tacky adhesive. You can see down the bottom there, they have those kind of grab pieces for you that are not adhesive. I cut these off because I don't want them on my little platform, because obviously they're not going to stick to anything. They are not the sticky part. It does mean that you kind of have to make sure you peel away the top and the bottom, but here you just peel it off. I love these because they do have all the measurements, they have all the grids. It's really easy. I stick one side down onto my base, and then I'm going to pull up the top side. Now, alone, I guess maybe sticking these onto kind of a non-porous surface, they don't stick super well if I'm like pulling up my card base off of them, or pulling up a card front, which I've stuck down temporarily whilst I'm stamping. So I do the same thing that I do with my sticky grid mats. I just add a little layer of washi tape around the outside. This holds it down perfectly, and this also lasts a really long time. Now obviously these are not, you can't wash them as easily as the sticky grid mats, but they work perfectly. There are 5 in a pack and they last a pretty long time, which has been working well for me. So just an alternative depending on what you can get your hands on. There are lots of different alternatives out there, so I was just sharing a couple that I use. Now I have peeled off just the main strips down the center there. You can see I'm actually leaving the bottom and the sides because I'm going to do a little bit of stamping on top of our grid that we have created. Now this is a stamp set from Alina Crafts. I love this little flower. It looks maybe like a sunflower in a bottle. This is gorgeous. Then to fill in a little bit more down the bottom, I have this stamp set here from her as well, and these are little, I think they're called cattails, or they're called bulrush. They're called lots of different things in different countries, but I just wanted to make it a little bit more like grass. So I actually cut off some of those on one of the stamps, and I end up using that stamp as grass quite a lot. So I'm going to use that today as well. I'm using some VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is just a pigment ink. It is going to stamp beautifully over top of our watercolor paints. And here is where I'm going to add in that little bit of grass. I'm just using this with an acrylic block for no good reason other than the fact that it was already on one. And sometimes when I'm stamping off, I am going to make sure I cover up that little bit of sticky grid. As I said, it doesn't wipe clean quite as well as the other mats do, but if I look after it, then it's not tricky at all. Same thing here, I'm just going to stamp a little bit of that grass on the other side and make sure that I don't cover up any of my bottle, and that is going to be pretty much the main picture. Obviously you can put absolutely anything in here. You could put any kind of silhouette images that you want at all. Here is where I'm going to take off all of the masking paper, and it leaves this gorgeous clean little grid. I really love this look, however I decided I wanted to add a little bit of shine. And because I stamped this using a pigment ink, it is going to stay wet long enough that when I actually change my mind here, I am going to be able to add on some embossing powder. This is a clear embossing powder, the super fine one, and it is going to stick perfectly only to that black ink that we added. Once I heat set this, it is going to be nice and dark and black, and it's going to shine just a little bit, the perfect amount. Now there are lots of different ways that you can finish off this card. There are lots of different elements that you could add on as well. You could also add some black die cuts on top. That would look gorgeous too. Just to lighten this up a little bit and give it a little bit more of something, I have the Lunar paste. This is the Slippery When Wet. It is essentially the yellow one from Simon Hurley. However, I find this is the best gold flecks I have ever used. I haven't come across another paint or another ink or anything that gives a nice shiny kind of the perfect gold, in my opinion, for gold flecks. So if I get some in the wrong place, I just quickly wipe them up, and then I just keep going until I have the perfect amount. Then I'm going to dry these with my heat gun to make sure that I do not smudge them anywhere at all. It's a little bit hard to pick up kind of how shiny they are, but yeah, these are the perfect amount of shine. I've been meaning to use this product in lots of different ways. I kind of have lots of ideas, but I'm still trying to work through all my other ideas. There are constantly cards that I want to be making, so it's just a matter of when I get round to it. I'm going to finish this off with a sentiment. This is from the Made For You stamp set. I've used this lots and lots of times. It is an absolute favorite of mine. It goes with pretty much everything, but of course this could be a thinking of you, a happy anniversary card. I mean, it could be anything. Lots of different occasions that you could use this for. I just needed a happy birthday one. Now this card front is actually the exact same size as my card base, so they both measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. So I do want to make sure I get glue right to the very edges, so sometimes I just use my finger to make sure I do that, and then once I have lined this all up perfectly, I often put something heavy on it to make sure that all of the edges and everything adhere really, really nicely and cleanly. And then at this point, there's just a couple of little things I want to do. I decided that for that bottle, just to make it stand out a little bit more, I'm going to add some Glossy Accents. My bottle of this is very nearly empty. Believe it or not, this is my very first bottle that I have used in my whole card making journey. It has lasted me so long, years and years. So it's sad that I'm finally done, but I probably need to reorder a new one. Good to know that it lasts that long though, and a little bit goes a really long way because I use this quite often. I did use a pin to pop all of those little bubbles, and you can see this is when it dried. It does have a little bit of dimension that's kind of hard to show here, but it also leaves a gorgeous shine. I'll leave links to everything down in the description box below this video. I hope you enjoyed using black and just one colour to create this gorgeous little grid here. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!